So a couple of updates on Diddy. We have not fully confirmed this. We are hearing that Diddy is enrolled in a domestic violence and a drug treatment program, two separate ones, while behind bars.
No one in that courtroom saw it coming. Not the buzzing journalists jammed into every row, not the die-hard followers camped outside since dawn, and absolutely not Diddy. The moment was electric.
We got some information. We broke this story a couple hours ago. Diddy is behind bars, but he is enrolled in two classes in jail. A class for drug abuse and one for domestic violence.
Domestic violence. These are programs that are offered by the federal government in the prison system for inmates, and he is enrolled in both of these programs. He's also, we're told, in therapy, separate from those two programs. And all of these things that he's doing, typically for one reason, to look good for the judge.
Well, it's important because sentencing comes up October 3rd. And Diddy, look, everything that I know tells me that he will get between 1 and 2 years, and I think it's going to be closer to 1. Prosecution is asking for 4. That's just not going to happen for a Mann Act violation. So if that's right, look, he wants to get the lowest he can get, and I think it's going to be between that 1 and 2 range. To get the 1, I think he's got to show the judge that he is taking his misdeeds seriously.
Right. And by the way, we know that even when the judge said that he was not going to let him out on bail pending sentencing, one of the things he mentioned was his violence. We've seen his violence.
Exactly.
So he knows that this is an issue for the judge.
And the defense conceded it.
Right. So that's something he definitely has to address. And that's what he's doing with this program.
I mean, Charles, he doesn't have to address it, but he is addressing it. And, this might help him with regards to his sentence. Maybe the judge might sentence him to lesser time because he's working on himself.
But Jamie, you know what the complication here is that he's been found not guilty on the charges that relate to drug use and domestic violence. That there was no conviction using force, fraud, or coercion in these 3 ways, and drugs. The Cassie video was off the table. The only thing he's been convicted of is taking a prostitute across state lines for the purpose of prostitution.
But can't the judge consider all of the testimony in the that was presented at the trial?
But the defense is going to say he was found not guilty on those things. So it's really kind of an interesting.
There's that, but there's another side of this. And Jamie, you've been working on this story for 5 days now to lock this down. But there was one key word, one of the sources you spoke to. You remember what that word was?
Yeah, redemption.
Yeah, because that's the other part of this.
Yeah.
That this is Diddy looking at my life after prison, because now that he knows he's not going to be locked away for decades, not going to be locked away for the rest of his life.
The instant the judge spoke and the ruling hit the air, reality flipped. The chart-topping mogulance, a name drenched in diamonds, excess and invincibility, is stripped bare, no longer a legend, but a man cornered by fate, shattered in spirit and out of seconds to spare. The courtroom fell into a silence so loud it echoed in every heart just moments before the verdict. Diddy sat tall, flanked by his lawyers, eyes locked fiercely on the judge. Meanwhile, many of you keep asking about my secret. I'm 41, a busy mom of 2, yet my skin glows and energy never fades. I skip those long 10-step rituals and never have hours for self-care. Instead, I rely on Goli Superfruit gummies bursting with bamboo shoot extract and vitamins A, C, and boosting collagen, firm skin, and that radiant glow we all crave. My skin smoother, visibly brighter, and honestly I feel a surge of confidence. Best of all, they're vegan, gluten-free, delicious, and truly uplifting. Check the links below. Order fast on Amazon or save 10% at Goli's site with code cellophane. The tension hung heavy, not just in the room but in every breath and glance. Even the judge's voice wavered as he readied to drop a verdict that wouldn't just close a chapter in Diddy's life but send ripples through the entire music world. When the sentence landed, slicing through the thick silence like a sharp blade, Diddy didn't merely flinch, exploded. Rewind a bit, for months that courtroom was a stage for chaos, daily shocks. Witnesses dismantling the carefully built legend Diddy had crafted for decades, founder of Bad Boy Records, the force behind hip-hop's greatest stars.
But we are hearing that he is participating in those two programs. To me, and by the way, for two reasons. One, he clearly needs help. I think we heard that from the trial. Whichever way you come out, he needs help, and that's clear. And the second reason is that he's going to be sentenced. And one of the things judges look at is, is this person rehabilitated or trying to rehabilitate themselves? So you could argue the rehabilitation should be don't hire prostitutes, because that's all he was convicted of. And so it's not so much the domestic violence and everything else, because he was never tried for that. And when it came to, using force or coercion against Cassie or Jane, he was found not guilty. So when you think about it, what is the point of drug treatment and anything else if he wasn't really found guilty of that? He was found guilty of hiring prostitutes and sending them across state lines. But optics matter. And there was testimony about his violence. So I think if he's doing this, which we're hearing he is, it's probably a good idea. Now, the second thing is the judge asked the prosecution to come up with a list of cases where the Mann Act was used, but the John was prosecuted and sent to jail. And I am hearing from some people inside this case that prosecutors may have trouble coming up with that list, because typically it's not the Johns that are prosecuted under the Mann Act. And that makes this very, very interesting in terms of sentencing. That if, he was convicted, but they can't find any other cases where the Johns face serious jail time, the defense is going to say, this is selective prosecution. You're singling out one guy and throwing the book at him when that's not the way the legal system has worked in the past. It's up to prosecutors to come up with that list, and they may not be able to. And that's going to be really interesting in October when Diddy is sentenced. Now look, he could get 10 years. That is not going to happen. He's not going to get 5 years. Even prosecutors are saying 4, but he's not going to get 4. I think he is going to get between 1 and 2 years.
The mogul who once dazzled in gleaming suits raising glasses with the world's elite now sat engulfed in a blazing legal storm, devouring his legacy like a relentless disease. Throughout the trial, whispers surfaced, darker secrets than anyone dared admit, hidden parties behind locked doors, covert recordings, hush payments, threats, accusations. Far beyond mere scandal, they teetered on criminal territory. Though a few major charges ended in not guilty verdicts, the convictions that remained carried crushing weight, yet some still believed Diddy might walk free. He believed his influence, wealth, and status would always be his shield, but this time there was no red carpet, the cold courtroom. No after parties, no VIP treatment, no velvet ropes. Only truth, or something close enough, and consequences money couldn't erase. As the judge announced the sentence, it was clear the flawed system was about to do something rare: hold a star accountable. Those years weren't just digits, they were a thunderous statement. Diddy's eyes snapped open, jaw tightened, clutching onto the last shred of his composure.
Unique bail package. And you didn't tell me if it was unique. $50 million, right?
Yes.
The idea of private security. It was an interesting argument because who would monitor him. It was interesting because the prosecution at one point had said it's not fair, right? He's a wealthy celebrity who's providing a bail package that other people in his similar position wouldn't be able to provide. Now, the defense was like, well, the only reason we're presenting a package like this is because of what he's accused of and his wealth and his resources. We have to address that in a certain way. The reason it's so extensive is because of his wealth and resources. That bail package that was put forward was rejected by the court. What did you make of that?
Well, at that time, the judge was looking at the RICO Act and sex trafficking. So, Puffy was looking at possibly 25 years, or more, depending on what the guidelines were based on if he was convicted. So at 55 years old, at that time, it's almost a life sentence. So, and he has a lot of wealth and he had a private plane. So the judge was looking at that. Plus, in the federal system, they look at danger to the community. Where in the state system, they're not allowed to look at that. They look at risk of flight. So I think with all the letters behind that were coming in that we were not really privy to from a lot of the alleged victims, I think the judge made a decision that, hey, this is not going to be sufficient enough. I thought that at the end, he kind of, when we brought it on our private security team and we showed him who was going to be doing it, and we did Sam Bankman-Fried. So we knew that, we would be completely covered on that end. And we gave him the idea of there would be no Wi-Fi in the building that we were looking at, and that he would not be able to really be able to connect with anybody but his legal team and his family. We thought at that point that maybe we had a chance, but at the end, the judge denied it, and that's where we stood. And now on this case coming forward, after the convictions, after he wasn't convicted, at the end, we didn't know what he was going to do. So, when Mark reached out to me afterwards, we started thinking about putting another bail package together.
And what is that bail package and by the way, is this a bail package that you think could be submitted again even after the judge just denied bail?
Well, the judge denied bail based on the statute, and the statute stated a certain amount of information that part of the Mann Act that, was not eligible for bail. There are certain circumstances that can be done. We're going to regroup again. I know that they were going to go talk to Mr. Combs again and see what happens there. They have the October 3rd date. And, I don't know where he stood. As of the other day, he wanted to get out. I don't think anybody wants to be at MDC where he is. So, we're going to reconvene and see what happens, at a later date. We could go back with another package.
Would that would require him to stay in New York? Would it be him to be? I know he wanted to go back to his property in Miami, Florida. And there's also an interesting question I think that his defense put forward.
His composure began to crumble right then and there. Insiders whispered he muttered something barely audible. Some say he tried to rise as if sheer will could rewind the verdict. But it was too late. The gavel had fallen. The deal was done. Court officers moved in ready to lead him out not as a mogul but as a prisoner. And then came the real explosion. Diddy, usually calm, calculated, and controlled, he snapped. His voice shattered the silence, yelling at the judge, the prosecutors, even his own team. Witnesses said they had never seen a man unravel so completely. One onlooker claimed it wasn't anger, it was pure raw fear. Not fear of jail itself, but fear of what jail symbolized. The empire he'd built wasn't just collapsing, it was burning to ashes right before him. Chaos erupted. Court officers struggled to physically restrain him as he resisted arrest. His team sat frozen, stunned, unsure how to react. In the courtroom's back, family and allies bowed their heads, avoiding all eye contact. No one moved, no words were spoken. The expressions alone told the story. This was the end of an era. A fall so deep it shook the very foundations. Outside the scene was no less intense. Cameras flashing, protesters shouting, divided fans and critics alike, some in disbelief, others cheering justice's arrival. Over everything hovered the immense weight of what this moment truly meant.
And then the judge's clerk is like, oh, okay, so both parties agree, and then this matter is adjourned.
And that was it. I worried that's what was going to be, because when they had the letter basically working out the date, I was like, oh, what are they going to talk about? And then after that hearing is when they switched it back to October 3rd.
Yeah.
So not much there. You didn't see Sean Combs. Okay, let's talk about some other things that have been going on. First of all, big news. There's a new lawsuit that came out against Sean Combs, okay? This is pretty disgusting. You have this unidentified John Doe who claims that in September of 2020, so relatively recently, he, Diddy, and others, they go to this warehouse out in LA. that apparently contained some of the clothes of Notorious B.I.G., the rapper who was shot and killed in 1997, Sean Combs' friend. And people start taking drugs. They start wandering around this warehouse. And this John Doe claims that Combs started watching pornography on his phone. And that is when he claims, again, warning, pretty disgusting allegation, that Combs grabbed one of Biggie's t-shirts and pleasured himself with it, into it. I don't know how the best way to explain it. And even alleging that John Doe, or insisting that John Doe finish the job, so to speak. And he then claimed Combs threw the spoiled shirt onto John Doe and said, "Rip Biggie," then left. He also claimed that 15 years earlier, Combs told him to perform oral sex on him, reportedly suing for intentional infliction of emotional distress, sexual battery. Don't have a ton of information, but for somebody who has been following so many of the civil lawsuits that he now faces, 66, 67, 68, how does this fit into all of them?
Well, it seems like it's just kind of showing a pattern that all the lawsuits seem to kind of allege of power, control, sexual pleasure, all of that stuff. I would say the timing of it is a little surprising given that it came after the verdict a little bit, but I think it kind of, again, goes to that pattern that a lot of the other civil suits we've seen, and these can be by just different attorneys too. It's not always the same attorney who's filing these suits, but it seems like they all kind of go to this pattern, it seems. But again, I'm just more surprised at the timing of it and when this was filed too.
To be clear, there are lawsuits that he's facing that contain allegations that were never discussed in any way in the criminal case.
Right.
But in the criminal case, was it ever alleged that he sexually assaulted men? Was it ever alleged that he grabbed men or forced them to do things, or was it mostly focused upon women?
Seems like it was mostly focused on women, and that being the victims in this case. I think as far as just kind of the allegations towards men were really just having to do with the escorts or the entertainers, as they were also called in the criminal trial. Part, it seemed like from what we heard in the criminal trial, which I know a lot of people are a little disappointed because they thought it would be a lot more, but really it was just kind of like just different isolated incidents involving two victims, being Jane and Cassie. But it seemed like there wasn't a lot of discussion about male victims in this trial, but there were.
Despite years of rumors and whispered tales, there was now an official sentence, a verdict, and a name forever linked to scandal, corruption, and a shattered legacy. But don't be mistaken, this collapse didn't happen overnight. Diddy's downfall wasn't the result of a single error, crime, or wild night gone wrong. It was decades in the making, decades filled with hidden secrets, dark shadows, and power wielded behind closed doors, now exposed to harsh light. Witness testimonies weren't merely damaging, they were bone-chilling. Tales of manipulation, control, even horror, those once loyal now turning against him. Mentors turned monsters, and after the verdict, the fallout rippled out swiftly. Record labels distanced themselves, collaborations vanished overnight. Artists who once praised him fell eerily silent, some issuing quiet, unnamed disassociations. In this industry, who you're linked to means everything. And now Diddy had become toxic, an untouchable shadow of his former glory. But perhaps the most chilling truth is this: his story could have been rewritten. A legend without an asterisk, a mogul untainted by scandal. He had the fortune, the clout, the raw talent. Yet somewhere along the line, power curdled into poison, eating him alive from within. As the courtroom emptied and headlines blazed across every screen in America, one image pierced through the noise: a Diddy in handcuffs, no entourage, no flashing cameras, just a solitary man facing the price that finally caught him. In that moment, the hip-hop world wasn't just witnessing a folly, was witnessing the reckoning of a culture that long shielded its giants at truth's expense. Because when the lights fade, the music stops, and the courtroom doors slam shut, what remains is only what you did and what you couldn't outrun. This wasn't merely a sentence. This was history.